have to do something big and important, or nobody will remember you when you're dead.
Side chest. 21 and 7 switch.
I want to be Mr. Olympia one day. I've been training for this every moment of my entire life. Like my deltoids, judges always say they're too small. Think they're liars?
Everyone's a liar. It is important that you find people that you can make an emotional bond with.
I'm asking you nicely and in a calm voice. If you're not 100%, you will never be successful.
Nobody knows who you are. Nobody.
Well, you gotta commit all energy and focus to being the greatest bodybuilder on the entire planet. That's what separates one from being a champion, one from not being a champion. Hey guys, Killian Maddox is here. Current eyepiece. No! Fair. It ain't supposed to be fair. It's how it works. Oof.
How are you doing, Killian?
What? When I close my eyes and dream, they're gonna put a picture of me on the cover of the magazine. And the entire world will know my name.
Hello and welcome back to Dave's Movie Diary. Magazine Dreams 2023. I'll start off by saying this one was actually recommended to me by my son. He's approaching 21 years old. Look, it's pretty rare that he recommends films to me, so that immediately pushed this to the top of the watch list. I thought it must be special if he's onto it. He's got a really good taste in films, I will say that. He doesn't really go in for the standard kind of superhero or mainstream stuff that most people his age, or no, most ages, go in for. He seems to like challenging films or films with complexities in them, or films that make you think. So, yeah, it was a good thing that he recommended it to me. So I'm just still trying to work out what the hell I think about this movie, to be honest. And that's rare for me. I usually watch a film and I've got a pretty good idea, even before it's finished, what I think. And then the next day I usually sit down and talk to myself like this about it. But I'm still grappling with it, to be honest. And maybe talking out loud during this pod will settle things for me. I will say it's a few things. It's very uncomfortable, this film. It's very impressive. It's disturbing and provocative. I don't know that it's a film you watch more than once, but that's just a personal opinion. I'm pretty certain it's not a date flick. And I'm pretty certain it's not a film you take your parents or your grandparents to watch. So I wisely watched it by myself last night here at home, and it's not one I'll be sharing with my elderly parents. What's it about? Well, it's about a guy called Killian Maddox. He's an aspiring amateur bodybuilder who has dedicated the last few years or more of his life. He looks like he's about early 20s. Living in the US. I never quite worked out where. I probably missed something, but he's just obsessed with becoming physically perfect, and one day appearing on the cover of fitness magazines. So hence the title of this film. Outside the gym, he works a reasonably mundane supermarket job just to get some cash. He's also caring for his aging grandfather, who's a Vietnam vet. and lives with the aid of an oxygen tank. But the main thing about Killian is that, apart from his bodybuilding, is that he struggles really badly with social interaction and seems to find it hard to find an emotional connection with anybody. As the film goes on, we watch his obsession with bodybuilding consume every other part of his life. So when it starts out, I thought, oh yeah, okay, obviously this guy's into bodybuilding. I mean, he's totally jacked. And he's either in the gym. When he's not at work, he's in the gym, or he's working out in his room in front of a mirror. His room's got, I don't know, hundreds of magazine covers of bodybuilding guys and gals, which he looks at all the time. The only time he's not thinking about bodybuilding is when he's got this weird routine where he does a workout in his room in front of the mirror. Then he sits down on his bed with a protein shake and watches porn on his laptop. So can't imagine that leads to a good sleep in some ways. But anyway, I just found that interesting. Back to his obsession with bodybuilding. It does consume every part of his life. It consumes his need for approval. It affects his inability to form relationships. It makes him very angry. That's partly because of the steroids that he's taking. And ultimately, there's some very dangerous psychological consequences for someone who, apart from the roids, is basing his whole identity on a dream that will likely never happen. So it's definitely not a sports film. Let's say that from the top. Even though it's about bodybuilding, there are bodybuilding sequences in the film of competing. That's how the film leads off. I would not classify this as a sports film. It's much darker than that. It's definitely a character study about obsession and emotional isolation. Except for some technological details, it could nearly have been made in the 70s when the movie industry had lots of films like this about a deep character study. Especially someone who's a bit of a maniac like poor Killian is. This film was directed by a director called Elijah Bynum. Interestingly, it's only his second feature film. He did make a film 6 years prior to this in 2017 called Hot Summer Nights with Timothy Chalamet. That film just did not work for me. I should be careful to say that films are good or bad, but I will say that film just didn't land with me at all. I found it really tedious, and I gave it one of my lowest rankings on IMDb. And I'm a pretty easy marker, I've been told by a particular friend of mine who is the opposite. So for me to give that like a 5, I think, tells you that I really struggled to sit through it. It's amazing I did. Anyway, back to Elijah Bynum. This film is markedly different from Hot Summer Nights. What impressed me most is just how uncompromising the filmmaking is with this movie. It's like the best movies of this type. There's no attempt to soften it. That would be a big mistake. I think you're better off just leaning into it and just saying, yep, I'm going to own this. I'm just going to put it all out there, make it as realistic as possible. There's no Hollywoodizing of this film, I can guarantee you. There's no humor, unless you've got a really twisted sense of black humor, which I kind of do, and even I wasn't laughing. There's definitely no relief. You're simply expected to spend over 2 hours inside the mind of somebody who's slowly losing control. And I'm with that. I'm okay with that. I've done that countless times, not just in movies, in life too. But I think younger filmmakers sometimes have a willingness to go places that older directors might avoid. At the start of their careers, they're not as risk averse. In saying that too, I wonder if older filmmakers who are very comfortable can probably take some risks as well. It's mainly that middle-aged, set that are still concerned about career destruction, maybe. Anyway, you get the point. This film never backs away from discomfort. It revels in it, even when it becomes very difficult to watch. And there are some difficult patches in this. They weren't as difficult as they could have been, and I'll talk about why later on. First impressions of this film. Straight away, I knew that it was about obsession. I mean, look, the topic and the cover art probably are a bit of a giveaway. A guy flexing in his room with posters everywhere, and you don't get to be that jacked and that that into a sport like bodybuilding, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a solo endeavor most of the time. You have to be obsessed. Look, you have to be obsessed to get good at anything, but I think especially building your body up. I do go to the gym quite regularly. Definitely not for the same reasons as Killian. Anyone who's seen my body would probably scratch their head and say, Dave, do you really go to the gym? Yeah, look, I do. I just do it more for mental health reasons, I think. Push against something and pull against something and make my body feel a bit like it's useful instead of sitting down all day. But anyway, enough about me. Watching him doing the pull-ups in the gym, screaming at the top of his lungs, screamed obsession. I have seen guys like this in the gym. This obviously dramatizes everything and goes a bit over the top. But I have seen particular folks at the old man gym that I go to, even talking loudly on the phone and screaming to themselves when they're working out. So Killian just does it a bit more, and when you get a look at him, you just stay away. You wouldn't be interacting at all. All the flexing endlessly in front of mirrors. He's more than that, though. On his laptop, or when he's not watching porn, last thing, he's watching bodybuilding competitions, and he's got heaps of videotapes of old, going back to the 80s and 90s, old bodybuilding competitions. It's his whole life, this guy. Every aspect of his life, excuse me, revolves around this obsession. But what struck me immediately as well is that compared to the other bodybuilders in the competition that the film kicks off with, you see them all there on stage. There's 6 of them. They're all turning sideways and this way and that as they do to accentuate the body sculpting they've done. He immediately struck me as someone who isn't enjoying himself. He looked like he was forcing it. He looked tortured. Everyone else looked pretty focused and chilled and even sort of quietly enjoying, and that should, I think these guys are incredible if they do it properly and in the right way. Why shouldn't they get the acclaim that they've, for all the time and effort and lonely hours that they've spent doing that? But Killian, there's no joy in his face. He's got the most forced smile I've ever seen. It is atrocious. And straight away I thought, there's something not right here. Jonathan Majors is the actor portraying Killian Maddox in this film. He is extraordinary. The physical transformation stands out. I'm assuming Jonathan is not as jacked as this all the time. He's obviously in pretty good shape to be able to pull this off. But what impressed me much more is how completely he really captures social dysfunction and awkwardness and on the receiving end of alienation, and he just the scenes with his supermarket co-worker are a great example of this. They're incredibly hard to watch. She sort of reminds me of a more attainable, normal version of Jennifer Lawrence. She sort of gave out the same energy. And she's into him, like anyone can see that. He can't see it though. And he makes a very awkward attempt to ask her out, at the same time simultaneously talking himself and herself out of accepting while he walks around, while he backtracks and walks out. Really painful. I can relate to some of that. That was I was probably about 50% of that awkwardness back in the day. So, yep. But interestingly, I think those scenes were the only moments where I genuinely found a connection with him of any sort. It's the only time he really lets you in. Then they go on the date, and the date just goes as you would expect. He is too intense. He can't shut up about bodybuilding. He also commits a bad faux pas when he talks about that both his parents are dead, that his father murdered his mother, and then he committed suicide. That's just when they've sat down and start perusing the menu, by the way, and she's still really into him and giggling, and I thought this is going well, and then he mentioned that, and that was kind of the beginning of the end. But those were the only rare moments where there was any vulnerability in Killian, and I don't blame Jonathan Majors for that. I just think the script is oppressively dark. I do think it needed a bit more light to counteract all the shadow. There's a lot of shadow here. Loneliness just, oh my God. I'm always a fan of Lonely Man films, or Lonely Man music, or, I think some of the most honest and reflective art of any kind comes from loneliness and drawing from within yourself. But I think this film really captures it. Loneliness is probably one of the key themes here. There's this devastating moment where Killian's sitting down and literally types these words into Google. How do you make people like you? Honestly, that was probably nearly the saddest moment in the entire film for me, because it was just a quiet moment when there's no one else around. He's just being himself, and he types that in. Clearly somebody who desperately wants a connection and just keeps on, it's like films where you see maybe guys chasing each other across rooftops, and the first guy's jump, and then the second guy tries to jump and then just misses or just hangs on. What did I see? Oh, Vertigo. I was watching Vertigo not that long ago, and that happens at the start of the film when Jimmy Stewart's chasing someone. Anyway, I'm just trying to make the point that that's Killian's efforts to reach out. He gets partway there and then just crashes and burns. So he's so desperate for affection of any kind from anyone, and he wants to be recognized for what he is and all the effort he's put into his body, and but he's just got no idea how to function normally around anyone, maybe except his grandpa. He sort of doesn't rev himself all the way up around him. But anyway, it's quite heartbreaking. I found those scenes more heartbreaking than some of the set pieces in the film where some pretty major things happen. I talked about obsession. He's just obsessed with not only being a well-known bodybuilder and being on the cover of magazines, but he's obsessed with other bodybuilders, and one in particular that he keeps on writing to and leaving phone messages for, and eventually they hook up. And there's an old saying that I can't remember what the saying is, but it's to the effect that it's sometimes a bad idea to meet your heroes, and the reason being that they can never live up to your expectations or your image of them that you've built up. And let me tell you, without getting too far into it, that Killian's hero does not measure up. I'll leave it at that. And if you want to watch this film, you'll see exactly why. I did obviously draw connections to some other films when I was watching this. I kept on thinking about De Niro characters. Taxi Driver. The same loneliness. That film is about loneliness in a slightly different way. That loneliness, Travis Bickle, the central character of Taxi Driver, his loneliness combines with his PTSD from being a Vietnam vet, and he winds up with some paranoid delusions and all sorts of other cool stuff. And you watch him literally disintegrating into a maniac. But Travis Bickle had the same inability to read a room and to self-check and to connect, especially with women. He also had the same unstable internal anger. Difference being that Travis Bickle was unbalanced from being in a conflict and was trying to, I guess, smooth that out using alcohol and pills, and tamp that down a bit. Killian's making it worse and going on these insane jags with the use of steroids, and there's some amazing scenes in there where he seems impervious to physical harm because of the rage that's built up from the steroids, and he goes on a rampage in a paint shop as revenge for a guy not painting his grandpa's house properly. Those guys mete out some pretty brutal revenge on him at just the wrong moment, by the way. But another De Niro came into mind too, which is Rupert Pupkin from The King of Comedy, which is that desperate need for approval. The Joker's another one, of course. The Joker, the Joaquin Phoenix character. That need for acclaim and being admired and being recognized and respected for what you do, but not being able to see that you're not quite at the standard you think you are, and you're probably never going to be at the standard where you get that acclaim. It's probably like pathetic people that do podcasts about movies and expect anyone to listen. Anyway, The King of Comedy, though, has a lot of black comedy in it, and this film doesn't, so that's probably where the similarity ends. But look, I think one thing probably sums up Killian Maddox's abilities to connect. He makes Travis Bickle look socially well-adjusted, in my view. Why is he hard to connect with? Well, I think he's got such an awkward vocal delivery, for one thing. He is so uptight that there is no sense of humor or no laid back. He's not a fun hang. He's not someone you'd like to shoot pool and drink beers with. I mean, he wouldn't drink beers anyway. For most of this, he's very particular about what he eats. It's a big flashing red light when he starts hoeing into big bowls of ice cream and donuts, and there's a particularly interesting scene at the end of his failed date with his co-worker when he orders everything on the menu. I understood why. I think I partly understood why he'd become the person he was, because obviously the trauma involving his parents. Like, I can't relate to that, but I can relate to. I can empathize with someone who's been through that, and that's fair. But I think he's hard to connect with in the film, or to feel more. Like, we really should be really crying our eyes out some of the things that happened to this guy. But for me anyway, I wasn't. Like, I felt bad for him, but he makes a lot of bad decisions anyway, and sort of doesn't just walk up to the edge. He goes over the edge multiple times. I assume mainly because of the steroids, but he is a bit hard to sympathize with and hard to even empathize with, because, like I said, there's no light or shade. You don't see both sides of the mask that often. Only 15% of the film. He's just not likable. It's hard to get any sort of insight into him. And I do think that slightly limited my emotional connection to him. Once his co-worker's out of the picture, the spiral's on, and it's really hard to sort of touch base with him again. Another thing I thought about watching this is big dreams, that concept of having a dream. And maybe this is more common than I thought, especially in certain societies where image and recognition is everything. And I mean, look, that's everywhere now, right? With social media, allowing people to not only project themselves to their followers, but also to be influenced by people who are really successful and make it look incredibly easy, and make the rewards of their success look attainable, when I'd like to think most of us realize the unreality of that situation. But there are a lot of people, sadly, who don't realize it, and they work incredibly hard, like Killian in this film. They give their life up, whether it's in sport or art or business or music or bodybuilding, podcasting. Sometimes, despite all that work, it just doesn't happen. And someone like Killian just is never going to reconcile that. Whereas, a lot of us adapt or redirect or find something else or make a joke about it or lower their expectations or protect themselves, okay? Protect themselves. But this guy doesn't. He just leaves himself open. He gets some, talking about online stuff, he gets some horrific abuse because this is another really awkward moment. He films himself pumping weights while he's talking, and he just can't get it right. Like I said earlier, he's got a shocking vocal delivery because it's so forced and because he doesn't have any natural charisma, and he's so nervous all the time, and he keeps getting it wrong and swearing. I could relate to that. That reminded me of the first umpteen times I was trying to do these podcasts, and I'd get a couple of minutes in and then just completely lose my train of thought or say something dumb, and I'd be swearing, and I wasn't punching windows out or driving like a maniac around the streets like Killian does, but I wonder now the ease of connecting, whether it's good or bad, does sadly lead to more of these situations than before. Just on that, I just remembered something. His driving scenes are really well filmed. I don't know how they did it, but they have this sort of point of view right behind his head, or his shoulder while there's various times where he's driving around and he's had an accident or he's had his head punched in or he's just really juiced up or various things, and he's just driving. He's driving like Gene Hackman in French Connection, but Gene Hackman was chasing a bad guy. Killian's just doing all sorts of crazy shit. And they get these cool angles behind him, and you really feel like you're hanging on for dear life in the back seat. The other great bit of camera work I want to talk about in direction is towards the end of the film, he ventures into town, and it's a sort of smallish town, and it comes from the previous scene. I think he's in his room. That's right, he's in his room. He's spray painted his walls. He's sort of all tooled up. He bought these weapons online, such a tragic thing to do, and he's put them together and puts them in his kit bag, and off he goes. And the camera tilts upside down to this really picturesque scene of the sun setting over this scenic little town. There's some lights out, it's upside down, and then it tilts back the other way. And it really sums up how he's just veering out of control, and his focus is just doing a 180. And from at the start, because at the start I thought, yeah, this guy's different and he's a bit weird, but yeah, okay, he's really focused and he's probably hopefully he's going to succeed. But at a certain point in the film, it's obvious he's not going to. Final thoughts on the movie. It's a tragic what-if story, I think. That's how I'd sum it up. What if someone genuinely works incredibly hard towards a dream, but, they just don't have it, whatever it is, the emotional strength, the upbringing, the foundations, the love, the psychological foundation to survive failure, because that's the other thing. You only get good at things through failing. I do think that's a problem these days. Anyway, that's a whole different story. But he believes anything less than success means he's failed completely. It's all or nothing, right? And that's a tragic view to have on life. I think so. He doesn't give himself any wriggle room. And when he does start to fail, then his rage takes over, and the drugs of various kinds really screw him up. He's got no mentor, right? His grandpa's just passed it. He's got no one to accept. Well, he thinks he's got one in the bodybuilder that he idolizes, who he eventually hooks up with. But trust me, that does not go well. Ultimately, the film made me think about modern society and this idea I touched on before, that unless you do something extraordinary, like become famous or successful or exceptional, or you're extremely charismatic, I don't know what it is, but somehow your life means less, like you're a loser. And that's a dangerous way to live. And I'd like to hope we move away from that. You know, why can't people just live in a way that reflects how they'd like to be remembered while they're still here? He keeps on talking about, I've got to be remembered. I've got to be, I want people to remember me in a certain way. That's all good and well, but why not just live in a way that reflects how you want to be thought of now? Why don't you live away now and then get that acclaim and be positive and feel good now? Maybe if you chase authentic lives, you're going to leave far more meaningful impressions than people endlessly chasing greatness, because greatness is, 0.01%. So yeah, look, I probably still don't know where I stand on this film. I do know it's extraordinary. It's got this extraordinary performance. I do think the script lacked a little bit of light that would have made it even more heartrending, and we could have connected with Killian a bit more. Apart from that, though, it's searing, it's real, it's brave, all the things I love. So yeah, it's a really good film. I think it's a one and done, and like I've said on other pods, or I'll probably say in the future, make sure you're in the right headspace when you watch this. Don't watch this if you've just had a crushing emotional blow, like your girlfriend's dropped you, or you've lost your job, or I don't know, you're really hungover or something. Don't watch this film then. It's not going to help. I'll never forget this film, that's for sure. And I think anyone who watches that, this film won't forget it either. So there you go. I can report back to my son now, and we can compare notes. He was really good. He didn't blow the story for me. He started trying to think about how to describe it, and he just said, just watch it. And he knows that I'll watch weird, well, in exclamation marks, weird stuff like this. So there it is, Magazine Dreams. Check it out if you like edgy, provocative, challenging cinema. Thanks again for listening if you are, and catch you next time.